both do low and high. Like I feel like we were both swapping. So I'm trying to figure out.
You want to figure it out right now?
I can do low, and you can do high. How about that?
Well, it's just,
Yeah, to snap a picture on your phone or something and just remember them through the season here. I think a lot of our ladies are actually at a prayer this morning are just coming out, so we'll have some people kind of filtering in. But on Thursdays, we have a great opportunity to hear from Gail, who brings us a great piece of history. But I'm going to ask first Ron to come up and just do what's happening down at the beach first, and then Gail's going to come up and give us a very appropriate piece of Maranatha history today.
All right. Well, happy Thursday. Boy, when I woke up this morning, I could hear the waves crashing down at the beach, and I took a quick walk down there. MLive said 8 to 9 foot waves. I don't think they were quite that high, but not sure I would recommend getting in Lake Michigan today. But we're going to be on the beach, and we do a water balloon launch at 2 o'clock. So if you want to come out there, we have this big slingshot and shoot water balloons like 300 feet in the air, and you get to catch them, and it's a lot of fun. So. See me down there. Hey, if the weather is a little iffy today, craft room's always open 1 to 5, so you can make your way there over at the FLC. And then tonight, after the service, we have our staff versus guest basketball game. So I will give you a word of warning. It's a highly competitive game, and but you're welcome to play. We get started about 8:45, and we do 2 20-minute halves running time. And then every 5 minutes, we yell switch, and a new group of guys or gals come in. And so if you can run the court for 5 minutes, then you can probably participate. We do put an age limit on it, 13 and up, and it's been a fun all summer to do that. So that'll be tonight after the service if that interests you at all. And, of course, the Q&A is here, which I would highly recommend as well. So, Gail, why don't you come and give us some history of Maranatha?
First of all, I will tell you, if you want something to do, Hackley Hume's Historic Homes are open today. They're closed Tuesday and Wednesday from 10 till 4. They're on my map over there, and it's really interesting. It's the biggest, richest lumber baron in the whole halfway of Michigan, if not all of Michigan. And he built these 2 fabulous homes, Victorian, so you might want to do that. And the Art Museum, if you like art, with a beautiful one here. It's free today, and that is huge because it's a little costly. So if you want to go there, it's on my map. But those are 2 things, and I've got other things if you want advice. So you can just see me later. But last summer, I talked about the main people that invested their lives in Maranatha during the formative years. Henry Savage was the first one, of course, our founder, and Maranatha started in 1936. His manager for 37 years, Howard and Ada Skinner. Henry stayed at the church, and he let Howard and Ada run Maranatha during the week especially. Carl Steele, the renowned chalk artist, was here through the formative years, and Strat Schufelt, who was the worship leader and vocalist. And I didn't have enough days to talk about 2 very integral people who were at Maranatha for 25 to 30 years. And because of Henry Savage's insight, Dr. Amy Lee Stockton became a regular speaker during the morning meetings all summer long. She counseled anyone in need and was the leader of the weekly campfire. Amy Lee was a phenomenon. She was known as the girl preacher. And in 1913, when she was 16, one headline said, "Girl Missionary preaches here at the First Baptist Church in Oakland, California." She was called the Girl Evangelist, a young woman of rare ability as a preacher, they said. Miss Stockton has a wonderful personality, possesses a remarkable gift in the use of the English language. She handles her subject as logically as many men twice her age. She is a little wonder. When Amy was still in school, she could fill a pulpit on Sunday. This is hard to believe, but it's true. I've got her autobiography with all the newspaper articles. She could fill a pulpit on Sunday, and then after school and on Saturday, she'd call on the sick and troubled, and then she'd start preparing services for Sunday. When Henry Savage attended one of her services in Grand Rapids, he immediately asked her to spend her summers at Maranatha and be part of the team. The rest of the year, she traveled the nation as an evangelist. I want to give you a couple of examples of her devotion to God's Word anywhere. She became the director of evangelism for the Great Calvary Baptist Church in New York City. She took a company of young people to observe meetings and train them for evangelism, leading them in street meetings on the corners of New York. A license or a permit was required, and you'll see why later, but she slipped it into somebody's purse or pouch or something. Nobody knew where it was. So they went out and got on the street, and they set up their portable organ, and they started to distribute songbooks. It wouldn't take long before the New York police arrived and demanded the license. And she said they'd begin to search for it, and it took considerable time to find it because nobody knew where it was. The longer they searched, the more impatient the law became, and a large crowd would assemble. When a big crowd was there, the license was produced. The New York police force never realized how indebted to them they were for the success of their street meetings. She said, "We felt we were following the scriptural admonition to be as wise as serpents and as harmless as doves." She did so many meetings all the time, all over the nation. In Jackson, Michigan, where I'm from, which is the home of the world, used to be the home of the world's largest prison in the world, Amy faced a prison congregation of, and it says 5,000 prisoners, so that could be true, but at least a whole lot. She said she was nervous, and she asked the chaplain who had arranged the meeting what subject he'd suggest. His answer was, "One subject I do not want you to present is the subject of the prodigal son. Nearly every speaker who comes to this platform has selected the prodigal son as his subject. Just talk to these men as you would any company of men, for they are all alike. There are many here who want to be out, and there are many out who want to be here. The meeting is in your hands." So she said, "I began my message by telling the congregation, sometimes when I preach churches, some people didn't like what I said and they would walk out. So," she said, "it's going to be a very satisfactory experience to say anything I want to say, and I know nobody will leave." My introduction, she said, received with laughter, and a bond of understanding seemed to be established between us that put them in the receptive mood. And this is really out of the black and white movies of old. The warden probably wasn't real thrilled that she was there. And so several times he interrupted her message by stalking onto the platform and taking the mic and shouting some prisoner's number. She said she'd pause and say, "Well, men, that's not my number, so it must belong to one of you." Amy instinctively knew how to gain the trust of people. She also felt she needed a partner that would enhance her meetings with music. She discovered Rita Gould when she preached in a large church where Rita was the dynamic worship leader, choir director, and soloist. Rita immediately said yes to her ideas to travel together, and they did it for 58 years as evangelists. When Rita came to Maranatha, she took over the children's chapel, and she was really, really good with kids, and she also sang solos on occasion while Amy took care of the preaching. There are many people at Maranatha who fondly remember the children's chapel and Rita Gould. Rita and Amy called Maranatha home each summer for 25 to 30 years. They were two remarkable women, and Maranatha was very blessed to have them. Thank you.
Such a great story, and such an amazing testimony to the history of this place and just the many evangelists and preachers and teachers who have come through here. And Gail's seen a lot of them, haven't you, Gail? Yeah, a few.
I was little for the first one, but I was there.
Yeah, so she is a treasure to us. Thank you so much, Gail, for that. Well, with that, just as Ron had said, just a reminder tonight after service, we come back in here, we'll have the Q&A. So that should be a really good time together, and your opportunity to interact with both Phil and Josh and bring in those pressing questions you've been pondering all these years, and you can get probably very good answers, and if not, well, just you can continue to ponder and have a great time of fellowship. So anyhow, but let's go before the Lord in prayer, and then we're going to hear from Rich and Kelly on what's happening at Walk Through the Bible. Dear Lord, we thank you so much for just the heritage here, for the the blessing of hearing those great stories. Lord, we're just thankful for the teaching we're going to have today that continues that tradition. And Lord, that we will just be fed your word and encouraged on the work in the kingdom. So we just ask that your hand be upon all these proceedings and activities today, Lord. We just want to honor and glorify you in all that we do here in Jesus' name. Okay, Rich and Kelly.
Good morning. Ooh, sorry about that. It was a little loud. Well, how exciting to hear about Amy Lee and the context of everything we've been hearing this week about women and their importance to everything that has gone on in the world so far. So it's really tremendous to hear the impact here at Maranatha. I'm Rich DiPolito. I'm on the board of Walk Through the Bible. I've had the privilege of serving for the last 4 years. And I'll tell you, it is an absolute privilege to do so. It's my wife, Kelly. She is my better half, and so glad for her to be here. So glad for her to be here today. So you've heard a little bit about Walk Through the Bible. I want to elaborate on a couple of things that Karen talked about last night, and that's people, purpose, and plan. So when we first got involved with Walk Through the Bible, we actually were introduced by Karen's dad, Paul Johnson, who most of you know, and we actually met him at another ministry function. So over the course of the weekend that we were there, we got to know Paul and really enjoyed spending time with him, and he invited us to Walk Through the Bible function, and the rest is history. We've been involved ever since 2006, and it's been a real joy. But one of the most important things about Walk Through, other than God's presence and being the center of the ministry, are the people that work there. And you've seen Phil in action and just see what a tremendous teacher he is. He's a gifted writer, and we're just really extremely blessed to have him as our leader and as our lead teacher. You may have also met Jenny Baxley, who is here this weekend. She's the VP of Administration. She does a fantastic job of just keeping the ministry together, keeping us on target, and moving things along. A couple folks who are not here that you hadn't had the chance to meet are Michael Gunnan. Michael is our Executive Vice President, and Michael is so great at operations. He just really pulls everything together. He puts together the strategies with Phil's guidance, and just can really help move the company along, or the ministry along. And one of the things that Michael has done is he's developed this checklist, and not only does he come up with a strategy, he's like, okay, here are the things that we're going to accomplish every year. He puts together an itemized list, and they meet every 2 weeks. And Phil will tell you, it's a little intimidating because Michael has this list, and there's these boxes, and they're all red, and you have to turn the red ones to green. So even Phil is sitting there saying, okay, well, I've moved this one to green, but I have a lot more I have to work on. So it's pretty great. I mean, he's very systematic. So things really move along at a pace that are really tremendous. Another person is Rich Leland. Rich has been in ministry forever. He's done a fantastic job for us just leading our international ministry. And there's, as you may remember hearing, there are 11 regional directors. Those regional directors are really the keys to this ministry. You know, we provide support here in the U.S., and you know, we help them with resources and with funding, but they're the folks who are out there meeting with the pastors, really getting out into the various countries and their regions and really spreading the word and sharing the gospel with people and getting people excited about the Bible, which is really fantastic. So each of those 11 regional directors, I've met some of them. Unfortunately, I hadn't been able to meet all of them. But what energy they bring. Yuri, who is here, was one of our previous regional directors. If you have a chance, please go talk with him and find out what he was doing over the years with Walk Through the Bible, because he is an example of the fire and the energy that these guys bring to each of their regions. So the purpose, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about our board. You know, our board members are just absolutely incredible people. It's hard for me to sit in a room with this group of people and be one among them. They're just incredibly godly people who are focused. They love the ministry, and they are there to make sure that things are running smoothly and really just to be an additional resource and prayer support. We pray for Phil and everything he is doing pretty much weekly, and all of the prayer requests that come in from him for the ministry. We are constantly in prayer for the ministry, which is an absolute honor and privilege for us. So the purpose of Walkthrough is to help people everywhere live God's Word. That really hasn't changed over the years. It's been the same mission. It's been hugely successful, and just the ministry is in the best shape it's ever been. And we're really excited to see what God has in store for the years to come. I talked a little bit about the plan that Michael put together for all of this. And part of the plan, I talked about this on Sunday just a little bit, that we reach out to basically 3 different groups. People who are biblically unengaged. So it's people who have access to a Bible, may have a Bible, but just really aren't into it, really aren't excited. So we spend a lot of time doing live events to get people excited. And Phil demonstrated that a little bit the other day. And they're just fun. These are fun events, and our goal is to just get people interested again and get them interested in the Bible. One resource that we have that I've spent a lot of time with is the Closer Walk Bible, which is just a great way to wake up each morning. So I spend each day with doing a little bit of Closer Walk, which takes an excerpt of the Bible and has a devotional attached to it, and just really challenges you to live a godly life and to walk what the Bible is teaching us. That's a tremendous resource. We have lots of those resources out there for people of all nationalities and just for countries around the world, which is really terrific. So another thing that we do is we provide resources for under-resourced pastors. And there's so many pastors out there that just don't have anything. They have no training, they have no resources, but they have a heart for God. And they want to get out there, they want to teach the Word to people, they want to get people excited about God, they want people to know who God is and understand God's love for them. And we provide those resources and enable them. And one thing that has come up, the third area that we're especially involved in, is for the persecuted church. Now, that's something that we did not set out on a mission for. I mean, it was never something that was on our radar screen, and God brought it to us. And I forgot who, somebody was talking the other day about sometimes you just have to listen to God, and when God's telling you to do something, you just need to grab it and run with it. Well, that's what Walk Through the Bible did. We understood the need out there for the persecuted church. And Kelly, you want to talk about that a little bit? I stole your thunder there.
Pretty much. Healthy ministries have focus. It's what really keeps a nonprofit in the center of their anointing, their calling, and what they're meant to do. It's part of the maturing of an organization. And I'm very pleased to tell you that I've seen Walk Through the Bible mature into that, to really have a focus, to articulate what they're teaching, why they're teaching it, and who they're teaching it to. And that's why it was really significant to me that a few years ago at a donors conference, Phil mentioned the persecuted church as part of the audience of Walk Through the Bible. And what he said was that the Holy Spirit had drawn the persecuted church to Walk Through. It wasn't an audience that Walk Through had cultivated at that point. It really struck me that was a movement of God. It struck me that this was an opportunity that they acknowledged, but they had seen God move it toward them. That there are under-resourced pastors in countries that are persecuted in horrific ways, who risk their personal safety to get the resources. The CDs and the workbooks that we're selling here that are in the resource table at the entrance to the meeting that we go to at night, they're risking their lives to get to those. They're gathering those in duffel bags and going across borders, and to the point where Phil has been concerned about them, going, is this safe? And they're like, it's worth it. So I'm really pleased that every prayer that I say on behalf of Walk Through, and that every dollar that I give has that sort of ministry focus. So I boldly ask you to join us, both in prayer support and in financial support, that's what you would be giving to. Thank you.
I have one thing I just
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, let's pray now. That's a great idea. Drew, why don't you come up and pray?
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, our heart is heavy for our brothers and sisters, people we know that love you, know you, and are committed, Lord, to giving their lives, if necessary, to glorify you in all they do. Father God, we would pray for you to take those individuals who've lost their homes, lost their churches, who live under this persecution, and I pray, Father, you would give them peace in the midst of it all. Allow them, Lord, to sense your pleasure in the fact that they are willing to give all for you. Father God, I do pray that it would also be something that would move within our hearts, that we would see and realize that we should be willing to give all for you. You alone, Lord, are worthy of it. Lord, we do love you, and when we hear of our brothers and sisters who are suffering, Lord, our hearts are heavy. But Father, we know you have never left them. You've never forsaken them. You've never left them alone. Your presence is with them. And Father, I pray that that witness would lead many, many more to know you as Lord, as Savior, as King. Father, I do pray that as the church is persecuted, you will be lifted on high, and many more will come to walk with you and know you. Lord, we commit our brothers and sisters to you. And Lord, we declare we love you above all things. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
So, rumor has it, there's a birthday today.
Today is his birthday.
Yeah, there you go. You get it up. All right. All right. Denise Carroll, ladies and gentlemen, she's going to be doing performances in the Tabernacle later on. We're all for that. Yeah, that's right. So it's Josh's birthday, but I guess, Bruce, is it your birthday too? It's Bruce Brown's birthday too, yeah. So we got 2 birthdays to celebrate. So we're going to start with the song, because that's what we do. And then we even have a little other, a couple things to do here. So ready? Everybody stand up. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Josh and Bruce. Happy birthday to you. Hey! Matt, you want to come up and honor your boss?
Josh, it has been such an honor to serve you over these years. And one of the things that many of you will never have the chance to see is how much Josh loves and cares for and encourages his staff at Josh McDowell Ministry. And one of the things that the staff team did for you, Josh, is we got a box of individually written cards from many of us here who wrote to you to celebrate your birthday, a word of encouragement back to you after everything you've done for us. So thank you so much. This is for you. And then we also know how much you enjoy having life around in all places you go and in your rooms and things. So we got you this pop-up rose bouquet for you as well. So let's wish Josh a happy birthday as we welcome him up on stage to speak.
And we'll be eating the cake right after service, so we'll stick around because we got lots of cake for everybody.
Yeah, and I'm diabetic.
I'll eat your piece.
You can. I already had a look on my thumb. Oh, it's good to be here. It's good to be alive in a world like this where we can have such an opportunity as individuals to make.
You're on your.
Oh. It's such a good job. But isn't it neat to be alive in a time where every individual can make a difference, especially with the web, social media, and all, the influence of others? And I find out that every person I reach for Christ, I reach about 25 others. I've estimated that out in my life over the years, that person will share Christ with about 20 to 25 others the rest of their life. And that makes it so worthwhile. And you know, we could all write an autobiography of how almost every major decision you think about, you ever make in your life, there was someone that influenced you in that decision. And boy, is that true in my life. And one of the men that's had the greatest impact in my life and ministry through artifacts and everything else is this gentleman. Where'd he go? Right there. Stick your hand up. Scott Carroll. And you heard his wife, Denise. Hi, Denise. Sit down. I can always know where Scott is because I listen for Denise's laugh. But Scott and Denise has had a profound impact upon the Josh McDowell ministry and upon my life personally. And so much of our ministry all over the world is through the using of artifacts, scrolls, etc. And they all came through him. And I'm thankful for that. This morning, I want to talk about the most critical thing in life. And it was one of the areas that I wasn't very good at. I wasn't at all. And I've learned over the years how to be much better in this area. But this is one area where we can have the greatest influence. It's relationships. It's relationships. Over the years, I wasn't very effective in, that's okay, yeah, in relationships. But thank God for my wife and others. I've become so much better. I've got a ways to go, but just in case you run into one of the bad parts of my life, I'm working on it and trusting the Lord for it. But I'd like to address the issue of relationships. Oh, you're permitted to sit down here? Oh, wow. Thanks, Chris. Oh, just because it's my birthday, I can sit down. Okay. But I call this relationships that transform. I'm not an expert in this area, folks. I am not. I'm a little more of an expert in the scriptures, the manuscripts and all, but not in relationships. I'm still in the process of learning a lot and growing. And I'm so fortunate to be married to the woman I'm married with because she doesn't let me get away with things that will interrupt relationships. And they have this chart. It has 5, there is a chart there, yeah. Has 1, 2, 3, 4 sections in it. The top section is a pyramid within a pyramid. This is the making of an individual. When you look at an individual, you see what? Their behavior. And that pyramid in the top is one's behavior. But it's kind of like an iceberg. In many of my trips to the South Pole, North Pole, not many, a number of them, you would see these chunks of ice there, but realize there's huge chunks of ice underneath the water that you don't see. And that's what's danger to boats also. But behaviors like the iceberg, that's the part of the waterline that you see. But there's a massive part under the behavior that determines it. For example, what influences our behavior? Our values. What you value in life, what you value in people, etc., so often determines your relationships. But what determines your values? Your beliefs. Your beliefs. I like to call it your worldview. Somebody says, what's a worldview? I said, it's how you view the world. Do you view it relationally? Do you view it scientifically? Do you view it economically? What? Then what motivates your beliefs? Oh, folks, it's relationships. It's relationships. Relationships motivate your beliefs that create your values that drives your behavior. A school shooter was asked why he wanted to kill people in the school. He answered this way: I'd rather be wanted for murder than not wanted at all. Wow. That's one of the most tragic statements I think I probably read in my lifetime. I'd rather be wanted for murder than not wanted at all. And I try to realize that every person I come into contact with, God wants me to love them. And the first thing in loving that I still have a lot to learn on it, is to listen. I like to listen so it gives me an opportunity to talk. Well, that's not the way it should be. And the 2015 research study in the journal Psychology and Aging followed people. Now think of this. This study followed people for 30 years. Think of what that cost for 30 years. And this was it. They wanted to find out what was the effect of relationships and all. And their conclusion was, for people in their 20s, the most important thing is the number of relationships they have. That's what satisfies them, the number of relationships they have. But for people in their 30s, it's the quality of relationships they have that affect their social, psychological well-being. In their 30s, there is a larger impact of relationships on the social and psychological well-being. Harvard did an 80-year study. I can't imagine that. Following a group of people, I forget how, it was a lot of people, for 80 years. That had to take millions of dollars to do that. And they wanted to find out the effect of relationships on people's lives. And they said the people who fared the best in life were the people who leaned into relationships with family, friends, and community. That after an 80-year study, they found out the key to happiness and well-being was relationships. I'm amazed. In almost every study I've ever done on people and what affect their lives, it can always, I could almost say 100% of the time, it comes back to relationships. The University of Toronto did a study, and it said family relationships seem more vital than friendships. You can be close to your friends, but it didn't have a big effect upon you. No matter how close you got to your friends. But it didn't have a big effect. But if you were not close to your family, you're at far greater risk of dying. It comes back to family relationships. And I know one reason I've struggled in this area, my father was, as many of you know, was a town drunk. I hardly ever knew him sober until I was in my 20s. And so I didn't have close relationships, family-wise. My mother, I heard her crying one day in the room, and I went in and I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "Son, all I want to do is live until you graduate from high school, then I just want to die." 2 months later, I graduated from high school, and the next Friday the 13th, my mother just up and died. That was it. She didn't want to live any longer, and she died on that. And it says the studies show people with strained family ties have more and report worse health. It's the family ties that affect your health later in life, not friendships. Now, friendships are important, but they don't have the impact of your family, good, bad, or ugly. In Psalm 26:3, New Living Translation says, "For I'm always aware of your unfailing love." It says not once in a while, not once a week, no. I'm always aware of your unfailing love. But what did that do? It says, and I've lived according to the truth. And I lived according to the truth. In Psalm 86:11, it says, "Teach me your ways, O Lord." Why? That I may live according to the truth. The scriptures. In Psalm 86, a couple verses later, it says, "For your love for me is very great." In Ephesians 4, it's something we all want. We don't all get, but we all want. When it says, but speaking the truth in love. How we want others to speak the truth to us, but in love. And I have to admit, many times I've spoken the truth, and it wasn't in love. It was in spite, resentment, jealousy, or something else. And I've had to confess that many a times. But you know what? I'm getting better. I'm not what I used to be, but I'm not what I'm going to be. But I'm sure enjoying the process. I am. I'm enjoying the process of growing, even at my age. What is the key? I narrowed it down to one thing. The key to these three things, I'm going to repeat them. Relationships. Rules without relationships lead to rebellion. Kids do not respond to rules. They respond to rules in the context of a loving, close relationship, especially with daddy, not the mother. Some of you women just went, you mothers are taken for granted. Look, that's a compliment. That's a compliment. With most kids, the mother's taken for granted, she'll be there. The mother will listen to you. They'll minister to you. They'll talk with you and everything. What's not taken for granted is the man, the husband, the father. Will he even be there? And if he is there, will he listen to you? Will he hurt with you? Will he cry with you? And so when a father does do that, oh, folks, the impact is way out of proportion when a father does those things to a child and affects them all the way through their life. When a father does do that. And then the other is truth without relationships leads to rejection. The truth about pornography, truth about the scriptures, truth about violence and all. You can talk to your children till you're red in the face. But if there isn't that relationship there, it usually won't connect. It usually won't connect. And that's so sad when it comes to porn. Porn is probably the number one thing killing the church in the world. Nothing else compares to it. And most people don't realize how huge pornography is. I'd say probably 50% of all Christian men watch pornography. And I think that's a low percentage. And then discipline without relationships. I would never, ever want to discipline a child if they didn't know that I absolutely loved them. Because discipline without relationships leads to anger, resentment, bitterness for usually their entire life. Discipline without relationships lead to anger. Porn without relationships leads to rejection. Is there anything that can override these four pressures in a person's life? Is there anything or anyone that can override the consequences of these pressures? One is peer pressure. Peer pressure. Second, society pressure. The pressure of society to be someone or be something or do something or to be accepted, etc. Or advertising, commercial pressure. I don't know how women do it, because I think every woman has to be in competition with the front page of a woman's journal. College pressure, going off to college and all that. Movies, with all the power of movies. Is there anything that can override all of these pressures in our life? Internet and gaming, the pressure of that. Is there anything that can override that? Pornography, oh my gosh. Pornography is so powerful. Is there anything that can override the influence of pornography and to lead a person to be able to eventually, you don't do it overnight, eventually walk away from it? Is there anything that can trump? Now, that's not a political statement. Is there anything that can trump these outside influences? they found one thing. In all their research, only one thing that will override all of those pressures. Can anyone tell me what you think they found in all their research? Anyone? What's the one thing that overrides all of those? What? Your religion? No. The Bible? No. Relationships. Especially biblical relationships, but relationships. The one thing that they found in all their research that will override it is a loving, intimate relationship with one's father, not one's mother. The mother's taken for granted, that you'll be there. You'll listen to him. You'll talk to him and all. It's the father that is not taken for granted. Will he even be there? And if he is there, will he even be present there and listen to you and talk with you and hurt with you and cry with you? A loving, intimate relationship with one's father is the one thing that will override all those pressures. The power of a dad's love is incredible. And I wish I had learned that earlier in my life in raising 4 children. There's a book called Hardwired to Connect. They wanted to find out how relationships and everything affected a person's social life and et cetera in their whole life. And the study didn't do any fresh research. Now think of that. They did a major study and didn't, bless you, and did no research. But it was actually brilliant. What did they do? They examined 5 other studies that had been done in this area. And then they composed all the results of those studies. And then came out with Hardwired to Connect book. And they said the very premise they learned from all these studies is that human beings are genetically wired, to form relationships at the moment of birth. Wow. The importance of the daddy at the moment of birth. Importance of the daddy at 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old. So many fathers don't think, well, 12, 13, 14, they can think, reason. No, right when they're born. To impart, the study showed, to impart one's values or truth to an individual. What is the key to imparting your values and truth to another person? Whether your own family, your neighbor, whatever. 1, the study showed, developing a loving, intimate connection with that child. A loving, intimate connection. 2nd, model the very truth or value you want to see ingrained in that child. And the studies show you can talk about it all you want, but if you do not model the value and truth you want to see ingrained in your child, it won't take hold. It won't take hold. And I think the best thing a husband can do is ask his wife, how am I doing? How am I doing with my children? Am I doing a good job? And then listen without interrupting. Most men can't do that. But listen to your wife, the mother of your children, without interrupting. And I'll guarantee you, unless you're a very unusual man, you will get an earful. Just so your wife knows there's no retribution for telling the truth on it. Jesus said, I have given you an example to follow. Do as I have done to you. Could you imagine as fathers we could say to our child, in our minds say to ourselves, I want to treat you the way I treat others. Whew. That could be scary for some men. Paul said, my children, pattern your lives after mine and learn from those who follow our example. Oh, if we could with a clear conscience say to our children, follow my life. Do as I do as unto others, etc. That could have quite an impact on a family. when the father says, children, follow my example. Do as I've done to you. Do as I do to others. When I lose my temper, I'm upset, I'm discouraged, whatever. At Columbia University, they did some studies. They wanted to find out the effects of family and drugs and all. What are some of the consequences in family? And here's what they found. Children raised in a single-parent home where the mother is the head. The mother's the head of the home. A child is 30% more likely to use drugs, alcohol, or be violent. That's a fairly good size percentage, 30%. But children who are raised in a two-parent family, but with a fair to poor relationship with the father, are 68%, over twice as likely to go into drugs, alcohol, and violence. In a two-parent family. But there's a fair to poor relationship with the father. But children who are raised in a two-parent family who have a good to excellent relationship with their dads, now think of this, folks. They already put it up there. Are less than 6% likely to ever go into drugs, alcohol, or violence. It's the dad's difference. It's incredible. Parental warmth and affection can protect against the harmful effects of toxic childhood stress. Of all the problems a child goes through in childhood, the hurts, everything. An incredible relationship with the father is the one thing that can override that. The lack of parental warmth, this is from UCLA, the lack of parental warmth, abuse in childhood is linked to multiple health risks in adulthood. They say most adult health problems can be traced back to the childhood. Man, that's scary. The reason is this: sons with good relationships with their fathers. What's the key to that? What's the result of good relationships with your father? Better at handling stress in your life. It goes back to relationships. Not with the mother. The mother's taken for granted. She'll be there. She'll listen to you. She'll pray with you. She'll hurt with you. It's the father who is not taken for granted. Will he even be there? And if he is there, does he even relate to you? Does he listen to you? Does he talk to you? Does he do things with you? At the University of Toronto, a study found those not close to their family more often suffer a heart attack or stroke. Not their friends. Their friends have very little impact on their health. It's a relationship with their father or family members that have the greatest impact on your health. Oh, in Psalm 26, for I'm always aware of your unfailing love. And what did that do to Paul? And I've lived according to your truth. That's what affected David's life. That's what affected Paul's life. The FBI did a study. It was called the Classroom Avenger Profile. They wanted to see what type of youth will become a school shooter. One, the Avenger profile is this: they're all white. All white. Not black, not Hispanic, not Asian. They're all white. Wow. And we thought white was so special. Second, they're all middle class. They're not from the poor and everything of the no. They're all middle class. But third is the key. In the Classroom Avenger profile, third, the father was absent, distant, or not involved in the parenting process. The stupidest, dumbest, most idiotic thing a man can ever say is, well, I leave raising the children to my mother. I feel sorry for those children. To miss out on the involvement of their daddy in their life. That would determine so much of their middle age and future. the relationship with their daddy, not the mother. Why? The mother's taken for granted, which is a compliment. She'll be there. She'll listen to you. She'll cry with you. She'll work with you. She'll spend time with you. It's the father that's the unknown factor. At Johns Hopkins Medical School, they commissioned two doctors, Thomas and Dazunski, to evaluate over 1,377 medical students over 30 years. Wow. Think of the money that took to keep track of all that, everything for 30 years. To see if they could find a common cause for mental illness, which is huge today, hypertension, malignant tumor, coronary heart disease, and suicide. Is there any one thing, a common cause of this, and what will override it? They found one thing only, the cause of all this. The lack of closeness to one's parents was the most significant predictor of these diseases. That they can look at a child and look at the relationship with the father and predict a lot of the things between upper middle age and getting older, what will happen to that man or woman and family. It seems to always go back to relationships and the daddy. You almost think they were biased or prejudiced. Stress and conflict with one's parents is the key. Men who say they have a good relationship with the father while growing up react less to day-to-day stress as adults. Almost every sickness, everything goes back to stress. Family conflict, family break, stress. And it's interesting, the research shows where the father has a good relationship with their father while growing up, reacts to stress in a negative way, less and less and less. Boys who grew up in loving homes tend to be much better at managing stressful emotions when assessed at middle age. The number one thing, stress. My daughter Katie, who is my third child, she came to me and she said, "Dad, there's a girl in our class. She's so brilliant. I'll call her Jennifer. I'm not sure that was her name. But Dad, she's just brilliant. And she's the smartest kid by far in our class." And then my daughter said, "But I'm going to be valedictorian." Now you're a parent saying your child comes up and talks about it and says, "But I'm going to," you say, "Is that boastful?" It's not boastful if it's true. And she did become valedictorian. And I said, "How can you say that?" She said, "Because of you and Mom." I said, "What do you mean?" Said, "Jennifer's parents fight all the time. She breaks out crying in class. She never wants to go home. She wants to go home and she hides in her room. She can't focus. She can't concentrate. But Dad, when I come home, it's like an island of peace." I thought, what a phrase for a family, an island of peace. She said, "You and Mom love each other. You don't fight. You're not arguing. And it's a safe place to be. I can focus. I can study. I can concentrate." And she became valedictorian. Don't tell me you don't have effect upon your child's studies and what they achieve in school. You do have an effect. If your child fails, I might ask, what part did I play? Maybe you didn't play any part, but probably did a certain part. What part did I play in my child failing? We're always so prone to take responsibility for our children's success. I don't mind doing that. It's a little hard to take it for their failures. You take a 12 to 14-year-old teenager without a close relationship to their father are 300% more likely to think about suicide. In fact, it's the number one thing they think of. You take a 15 to 16-year-old teen without a close relationship to their father, 15 to 16-year-old, 400% more likely to commit suicide, to think about it. That's huge. Lindsay Lohan, remember her? What was the phrase she used of a broken heart? I can't read it here. Here, come here and read this for me, will you, ma'am? No, just come and read this. What does that say right there? It's so small.
Confessions of a Broken Heart.
Yes, that was her theme, her song, The Confession of a Broken Heart. She said this, and I wear all your old clothes, your polo sweater. I dream of another you, the one who would never leave me alone to pick up the pieces. A daddy to hold me, that's what I needed. And she ended up in jail. One who would never leave me, and a daddy to hold me. That's what Lindsay Lohan said she wanted. Look at Michael Jackson. All of his weird behavior, holding his baby out over the balcony. Remember that? And the mountain and all, and the way he would dress and everything. You want to understand Michael Jackson? Take one long look at his daddy. When Michael was about 5 or 6 years old, something went on in the family or something, and he turned to his father and said, "Daddy," and his father stopped him and said to him, "I am not your father. I am your manager, and don't you ever forget that." And Michael said, "I never in my life ever forgot that." Michael Jackson said, "I just wanted a dad. A father who showed me love, and my father never did that. He never once said, 'Michael, I love you.'" That's how you understand Michael Jackson. "Oh, for I'm always aware of your unfailing love, and I've lived according to your truth." We want our children to follow our path, to live out the values God has given us everything. Then the key is to show them unfailing love. All secular research shows that is the key. I was at a university speaking outdoors, and it was a time of the Goths. We don't have them anymore, but the Goths, they were way out on the edge. And a group of Goths came and stood right in front of me, and they put on just like this, like, "I dare you to say anything." I love that. I would pay people to do that. Why? The crowd got huge because they wanted to know what was going to happen to me. So die. But and I just stared him down. And this one kid leaped out of it, and the whole crowd went, "Ah!" A little bit too, and he came right up. I mean, right in my face. I remember it well because he had buffalo breath. He did. Oh my gosh, it was like green mist came out. He said, "Mr. McDowell," and the whole crowd heard this. I had my microphone on. "Mr. McDowell, would you give me a hug?" A Goth that came there to break up the meeting and throw me off campus. "Would you give me a hug?" My father never once gave me a hug or told me he loved me. That was that Goth's problem, the relationship with his daddy. And he just wanted to be loved. And I'll never forget, before I could even, I remember this, I just started to pull my arms up, and this kid right in front of about 1,800 people just grabbed me, held my arms down like this, put his head on my shoulder, and just cried and cried like a baby. And the whole crowd heard him. Look at Hugh Hefner. Some people say, thank God for him. I don't. But anyway, the founder of Playboy. He made this statement in an interview. I knew my mother loved me. He really didn't even know his dad. I knew my mother loved me, but she never expressed it. So I learned about love from the movies. If he'd had a loving father, we never would have had Playboy. I know maybe some of you would break your heart, but that's true. We'd never have Playboy. It went back to his daddy and his mother. With my 4 children, 11 grandkids, whenever I saw behavior that I didn't think was good, or they were saying certain things that wouldn't be good, before I would correct my children, I would ask them 3 questions. And if they answered yes to all 3 of these questions, I had them in the palm of my hand. But if they said no to one of these questions, I was in trouble as a father. And these are the 3 questions. Son, do you know that I love you? Yeah, Dad. Second question. Do you know that I love your mother? Well, yeah, Dad. Well, Sean, when you get married, do you want to have in love, marriage, and sex, and family like what I have with your mother, or the relationships with your kids like I have with you? Yeah, Dad. If they'd have said no to that one, it would have been a lot more difficult parenting, and a lot less successful probably too. I would often say this to my kids at different times, maybe out hiking or on a trip or something. And I would say, Katie, do you know that I love your mother? Yes. Well, how do you know? You always tell her. Heather, do you know that I love your mother? Yeah, Dad. How do you know? Because you always kiss her. And I said, well, kids, let's say I got in the accident. I couldn't move my arms. My lips were all chapped. My lips were kind of closed. How could you know that I loved your mother? Whew. My 2 girls said, the way you treat her. Wow, that's the beginning of love for children. How you treat their mother or their father. A 10 years, that's a long longitudinal study. What was one of those? Anyway, it doesn't matter. It must be important, it's a big word. Longitudinal study identified students at risk. See, most studies are done for kids that went on drugs, went on alcohol, got pregnant. Why? But this study reversed it. Why didn't you? Why didn't you get pregnant? Why didn't you go to alcohol or drugs? How am I doing on time? 40 minutes? No. Oh, 10. Why didn't you get involved? 80% of the respondents, 80% said there is one person in my life who took a personal interest in me. Relationships. Now, 40% of the 80% said, what do you think? Who do you think? Did they already put that up there? Oh. Respond to me, don't lead me. 40% said it was a teacher. It was a teacher. Not their mom, not their dad, not an aunt, not an uncle. Their teacher that influenced their life. Wow. This is why I say teaching is probably the greatest, most profound job, whatever, in the world. What was it, honey? Profession in the world, teaching. That parents would allow you to pour truth into their children's lives. Boy, I used to intimidate my teachers. Oh. In California, any teacher can go into any classroom and stay as long as they want, as long as they're not disturbing. And the teacher can't say, well, I don't want anyone, they can't do that. It's legal in California to go. So I took advantage of that, and I'd go into all my kids' classrooms, and I sit in the back on the floor. And without wanting to, I know I intimidated him. But it was marvelous to, after a classroom, interact with a teacher. And then when my kids would get home, to interact with that classroom that I sat through and talk to them about it and what'd you think about this and that. The more we talk to our children, the greater influence we'll have on them, by far. And I wrote a book called How to Be a Hero to Your Children. And I really believe that the more we are a hero to our children, the more they'll listen to us, and the easier it will be to influence their behavior. Elderly men and women with close families are more likely to live longer than those without close family ties. It's amazing. Just about everything goes back to relationships, especially with one's father or family. And the closer the relationship you have, the longer you will live. You say, but my father died when he was 48, but he also had cancer. But just normally, your relationship with your parents determines so often how long you will live. The power of relationships, especially with the daddy. With the daddy. The Harvard study, which was 80 years. Think what Harvard had to pay to do that study. It was several hundred in the study, and they followed them day by day by day for 80 years. And the Harvard study demonstrated stable, supporting marriages impact one's mental health. And most supporting marriages and close marriages come from the parents, especially the father. Harvard study demonstrated marriage without divorce, separation, or other serious problems for a person reaching 50 has an effect upon their memory. How good your memory is later in life. What group is this? No. Relates back to the family and the closeness of it. And the biggest thing is the lack of stress. Stress is probably the cause of every social problem in America, is stress. And that's backed up by research. The University of Toronto study showed that those with close friends didn't fare as well as those with positive family relationships. Your friendships, no matter how deep, does not compare with your family relationship, whether good, bad, or evil. It's relationships. And to me, the responsibility of parents is, I'm not sure most parents realize how powerful they are in a child's life. How we raise our children is determining future family after family after family after family. And it comes back to us. The research shows the greatest thing you can do for your child is to love their mother. To love their mother. I remember one time, Dottie and I were in the kitchen, we were making out. 5 minutes left, okay. We were making out, and my kids were there, and my kids would all say, "Hurry up, Daddy!" and Dottie would kind of push away and say, "The kids are here." I said, "That's why we should do it. Our kids need to see us hugging and loving each other, everything. Holding hands, smooching, everything. You need to do that in the presence of your children." And so many mothers say, "Oh, our kids are here." Thank God they're there. That's part of one of the most important parts of raising your children is making out in front of them. It's the best part I like. Ongoing early childhood stress from grinding poverty, neglect, parents' substance abuse, and other adversities can smolder beneath the skin of a child and harming, this is amazing, it literally harms their brain when children grow up in a relationship like that. It literally affects the physical development of their brain. I never knew that. That as a parent, that Dottie and I are pretty well the determinants of our children's brains. How big they get, negative effects in their brain, everything is how we treat each other and how we treat our children physically affects their brain. That's scary. But God knew we could handle it. Stress in childhood can lead to some of the major causes of death and disease in adulthood, including heart attacks and diabetes. The damage, this is a pediatrician speaking, Dr. Hahn said, the damage that happens to kids from the infectious disease, a disease of toxic stress, is as severe as the damage from meningitis, polio, or pertussis. What in the world is pertussis? Diabetic? Oh, I got pertussis then. What is it? Whooping cough. Why didn't they say that? Wow. How we raise our children literally affects their health in their older age. The premise is that extreme stress and trauma can cause brain change that may interfere. Oh, thank you. I needed them. Can cause major brain change that may interfere with learning, explain troubling behavior, and endanger their health. The way we raise our children, how our marriage is, how our family is, the stress or what in it, literally affects the brain. Wow, I never knew I had that much power. But for good, bad, or evil. My kids, I got 4 kids. And when they ever do something really incredible, I say, well, thank God for the brain I created in your mind. I like to warmer childhood experience. When a child is raised in a very warm environment, not really stressful and anger and all, promotes better emotional management and interpersonal skills at midlife. Not right then. It kind of smolders underneath and comes out in midlife. And it goes back to how we raised our kids. Warmer childhoods promote better emotion management, interpersonal skills at midlife, which may help to explain why they have more secure marriages late in life. And most of the research that I've shown shows that very close relationships, marriage-wise, later in life stems all the way back to your childhood and how you were raised. Early life stress leads to depression, anxiety, poor educational achievement, and physical problems later in life. It's interesting how the child, I got 3 minutes left. How a child is raised and the stress level in a child's life affects their problems later in life. You know, we're intricate individuals, and I think very tender. Wow. The studies show those who suffered chronic stress in earlier life had smaller amygdalas, which amygdalas affect your, is it emotions and behavior? And they're smaller when there's that great stress in a child's life. Whew. The children who suffered early life stress also had more behavioral problems. Folks, in the Bible, the key to life is relationships. Somebody say, well, you don't know my background or anything. Let me tell you, I will stand nose to any of you. You want to talk about your background? I'll talk about my background, scare the living daylights out of you. How close a number of times I came to killing my father. Oh, I thank God I didn't, because way back then I'd have gone to jail for life. Today you'd have accentuating circumstances, but not back then. So I'd rather kill my dad today than back then. But it scares me how close I came in my life to major problems. And two things really made a difference. One was relationships. I thank God I was motivated to be better at relationships, and I have become. I'm a pretty good friend right now. I got a ways to go, and I'll get there if the Lord lets me live. But the other was the model of people in my church, and there weren't a lot of them. As a kid, I looked around and only studied. It was a small church, about 200 people. And I would watch how the parents would relate to their children. In fact, this might sound dumb, but in the lobby, after church, even before church, with those parents that were talking to their kids, I would move up close to them. I learned how to parent through plagiarizing, through listening to other parents and watching them, is how I learned to parent, both good, bad, and ugly. Folks, these will be at the desk. All my other talks are there, and you can go there and ask them for them, and they'll let you take and photograph them all off if you want. Just don't put them on the internet, and just don't sell them. Yeah. And, okay, come on up here. Here's one of my favorite books, 10 Commitments for Dads, How to Have an Awesome Impact on Your Kids. And then, The Father Connection, How You Can Make the Difference in Your Child's Self-Esteem and Sense of Purpose. These are two books that I've done on fathering. Now, when you read these, realize I'm not an expert. These are things I learned in the process of becoming a better dad, of becoming a father who can listen and spend time with. And I've done pretty good, haven't I, honey? Yeah. Notice she's not shaking it like this. She's going, yeah. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity to share. And I will put this at the front desk, and you can photograph it if you want to.
Thanks so much, Josh. What a blessing. Again, Q&A tonight, so you can get your questions in on all these informative talks, including, I'm sure, the relationships. I see sun popping out outside, so enjoy. I think we have the hot dog cart out, and the sweet shop is open. Have a great afternoon. Hopefully, you get up to the beach. Oh, and remember, there's cake in the back of the room, so grab your piece of birthday cake for Bruce and Josh. Have a blessed day.